You low-life scum.
As some of you may recall from the spoken word intro in episode 49, I'm a hypocrite. And so are you. We all live as small-scale hypocrites, inhabitants of the system that we are actively fighting to change. We affect change and reach one another precisely because we use the system. The phones made from conflict materials, the cars that run on fossil fuels. And while I am a big proponent of self-reflection and self-evolution, I think it's important to understand this one fact. We are taught that our hypocrisy matters, while theirs doesn't. We are told that having that smartphone means that we can't be against slave labor. We're told that using a plane to fly across the country as opposed to, renting a donkey means that we can't be environmentalists. Essentially, we're told that the way that we can really be legit activists is to live completely off the grid where we won't be able to bother anyone. Which is a pretty sweet deal for the powers that be, right? Just get us out of the way. Meanwhile, Obama preaches human rights while bombing the shit out of his children and shaking hands with tyrants. A queen sits on a $1 million chair and tells an entire nation to tighten their belts. A presidential candidate gives a speech on income inequality while wearing a $12,000 jacket. A governor claims to stand for human rights while channeling McCarthy in the creation of a blacklist for anyone who supports the BDS movement, a boycott movement aimed at calling out Israel's human rights violations. The UN, meanwhile, calls out wars and conflicts that in particular target children around the world while simultaneously removing Saudi Arabia from a blacklist of states that kill children, after having released a document that shows that the Saudi-led coalition, of which we're a part, by the way, has been responsible for 60% of child deaths and injuries in Yemen's bloody conflict. I actually don't even know if that last one is just straight hypocrisy. There's just so many layers of stupid and illogical. Anyway, as Annie Leonard, head of Greenpeace, said when we spoke to her during the Democracy Awakening actions here in D.C., we have to stop thinking that our individual choices are what will save us. Of course we should use a reusable bag. Of course you should recycle. But that's just being a responsible fucking adult. She didn't say fucking, I ad-libbed that. But take this for example, the California drought. As a former LA resident, I remember when we got little postcards in the mail reminding everyone how they can help mitigate the drought by, taking shorter showers, turning the water off while you brush your teeth, not watering their lawns excessively, and so on and so forth. Good ideas, fine. But not only were these postcards a waste of paper, they failed to address the biggest suck of water in California. The agriculture industry uses 80% of water in California. That's 80. Which includes anything from animal agriculture to almonds. And according to a 2014 Brookings Institute research, almost 40% of California's fresh water withdrawals are used solely for the production of fruits, nuts, and alfalfa. Alfalfa alone, making up about 15% of water usage, and the alfalfa, wait for it, is used to feed cows for dairy and meat production, wait for it again, in China. The fact that you zoned out under the shower head is fucking unacceptable. But the fact that we ship the equivalent of 100 billion gallons of water a year to China is just business. So shut the hell up about it. And this is, of course, where any argument with a status quo defender hits the wall. Yeah, California agriculture uses pretty much all of the water, but, it's the nation's fucking breadbasket. Do you want a life without spinach? Without avocados? Do you? Well, no, I don't. I love spinach, I love avocados. I'm also a fan of long showers, but I understand the need to shift our paradigms in the face of impending climate catastrophes. I also don't want alfalfa farmers to lose their jobs. I don't want the people who work on oil rigs or fracking sites to be unemployed. But does that mean that we should just keep on with business as usual? Or does it mean that we should look into alternatives? Not just for those people and their livelihoods, but for all the people impacted by environmentally destructive practices. It is actually possible to make changes that don't end in economic ruin for the people. It is possible to create trade deals, for example, that put people and planet over profit for the 0.1%. It is possible, truly. But the bottom line for the corporatists on high are why these shifts are seen as impossible. Grotesque to even suggest, how dare you? Their large-scale hypocrisy is what keeps the gears oiled and running. The facade, the veneer of giving a shit, of standing up for the little guy, is how they can do exactly the opposite once the cameras, and indeed our minds, are switched off. Here's another example. A couple of weeks ago, Obama visited Vietnam for the first time. A headline announcing the visit came with this subheadline: "Visit coincides with staged elections and crackdown on peaceful protests." When I read that, I thought, yeah, no shit. But the article was talking about Vietnam and calling on Obama to call them out for corrupt elections and crackdowns on peaceful protesters. At that point, I had what can only be considered as the precursor to a brain aneurysm and passed out. The Asia director for Human Rights Watch, presumably unaware of this double entendre, said, quote, "President Obama is making this trip to deepen relations with Vietnam. But this must be based on a foundation of respect for basic rights." I totally agree, but riddle me this. How many countries is Vietnam currently at war with? How many countries does Vietnam unilaterally invade or drone strike for no fucking reason? Is Obama not currently pushing for a trade deal that would essentially gut human rights, access to health care, and living wages for millions of workers worldwide, including the use of literal slave labor in Malaysia? Has he not jailed more whistleblowers in his 2 terms than all other presidents before him combined? Has he not backed up Wall Street and perpetuated the gross corruption of our economy and political process? But hey, by all means, ask this guy to speak out in favor of human rights and fair elections. I'll be over here lamenting the fact that I used a to-go cup 2 fucking weeks ago. And again, that's the point. If reusable bags were the answer to all of our problems, don't you think that we would have solved all our problems by now? And yeah, we need to continuously push to mitigate our own impact on both people and planet. We should always strive to be more responsible adults and evolve accordingly, and in that evolution realize that the large-scale hypocrisy in this system, this thinly veiled push for indefinite extraction and never-ending growth, is going to destroy us. It is destroying us. And we have to use every tool at our disposal to fight it. So raise a reusable glass and cheers to that.